Hey everyone, Noah here, and now that you've programmed the enemy character, it's time to turn it into a prefab so that we can then spawn it in-game in greater numbers to really give the player a fun challenge. But first of all, what is a prefab? Well, a prefab is an object that we store inside of a folder in our project window, and that can be reused as many times as we like. For example, I'll hold down the left mouse button over this Hazard 1 game object and drag it to this prefab folder I just created. And there we go, a prefab was made. This Hazard 1 is now a prefab. I can left click on this again and drag it into the scene view with ease, as many times as I want, and you'll see that I can quickly populate my small world with a bunch of hazards. So you might ask, what's the point of this prefab system really? You could very well simply select the Hazard 1 and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it instead, and that is a valid option. However, the prefab system is a great way to gain time. For example, let's say that suddenly we wanted to change the size of your hazards. So let me drag and drop a dozen hazard prefabs in the scene here, and I'll scale one up a bit. And now, because these all come from that same prefab, I can head up here to override and choose apply all. And this will scale up every single object that was made from that prefab. And it's the same if you changed a stat on the hazard. For example, if you increased its speed and then hit apply all, every single hazard will have an increased speed. Notice that you can also make lots of changes to your object, but if you're not happy with them, just click on revert all instead to go back to the exact settings of your prefab. Also, if you make multiple changes on your object, for example if you change its color tint and speed value, you can choose whether you indeed want all your prefabs to have both these changes applied, or if you want just the color tints to be applied to all prefab instances, or just the change in the speed value. And note that you can also edit the prefab by clicking on it in the project window and heading over to the inspector to click on this open prefab button. And now you can edit your prefab. For example, I'll change its size quite drastically. And all you need to do now is head back to the scene view and you'll see that all objects that were made from this prefab have increased in size. So yeah, this is an incredibly powerful Unity feature that you'll be using a lot when making games with this engine. But prefabs aren't just used for these reasons. Thanks to them, you can easily spawn objects into the scene via code, something you'll see with Liam in the next video when you create the spawner C# scripts. For now, I'm just going to delete all my hazards from the scene, making sure of course that I have one prefab of the hazard in my project window, because as you can see I can just drag and drop it back into the scene. What I'll now do is duplicate it with Ctrl D and call it Hazards2, and I'll change its sprite inside of the sprite render component. Now I can also change its speed or damage values. So I think I'll make this hazard a bit slower, but get it dealing 2 damage instead of only 1. And now I'll turn this second hazard into another prefab. When doing so, you'll see this pop-up appear. I'll choose Original Prefab. The reason we got this is because this prefab was initially made by duplicating an already existing prefab. By choosing Original Prefab, we've cut any ties it has with the first hazard prefab, so making changes to the first won't have any effect on this second one, and vice versa. And finally, I'll duplicate the second hazard, call it Hazard 3, change the sprites again, and I'll make this hazard pretty dangerous, making it fast, but getting it to only deal 1 point of damage. And then I'll turn it into an original prefab. And that will mark the end of this video. As I said before, you'll now create the spawner script with Liam, getting random hazards spawning at random positions in the scene. Once that's done, you'll actually have a fun working game on your hands. So get excited guys, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!